Hey there, Nate Birt, CEO and founder of Silver Maple Strategies. Thank you so much for being here today. This is being recorded for our June 2025 free webinar brought to you by Silver Maple Strategies. Normally, this would be a live session, but I'm actually going to be out of town when this would normally air. So I appreciate your flexibility in getting some of this content on demand. Today's topic is Get Funded Without the Burnout, Smart Systems for Scalable Grant Strategy. It'll be a little bit shorter than most of my sessions, but I'm hopeful nonetheless it will have some great insight. You know, one of the biggest concerns I have today about many nonprofit leaders is the risk of burnout, right? For themselves as executives, for their team, and frankly for their partners, right? 2025, when I'm recording this, has been a really unprecedented year for change on the federal funding landscape and in other ways as well. And so anytime that happens and there's a lot of complexity, challenges, unexpected shifts in the landscape, it can feel very disempowering. And the risk is that you are trying to just keep the lights on, you're trying to keep things moving forward, and you can burn out. So my goal is to help you not do that by giving you some systems to start considering and exploring and ultimately investing in to really help your clients and deliver the impact you want, and also make sure that you as a leader, as an organization, are whole. I am recording this from home. My kids are off for the summer break, and so if I get interrupted, I'm just going to keep recording. So I appreciate your flexibility, and we'll try to be as responsive as possible and get you to the content. So diving in, let me just give you a few overarching comments. So I'm going to first walk you through the resources that I have available to you. You can reach out to me via email or schedule time on my calendar on my website, silvermaplestrategies.com/contact. I'll make sure to get those resources to you. Go through some quick housekeeping, who I am, who we've helped, some top burnouts I'm seeing among nonprofit leaders today, give you a little sense of our resilience leadership model that we use to help clients here at Silver Maple Strategies, walk you through 5 smart systems for scalable grant strategy, how to make your grants process more manageable, give you some homework, and then give you a quick QR code for a survey to let me know how I did today, how I can serve you better in the future. All right. So let's talk about resources. So I've put together, based on the content in today's session, a cheat sheet called 5 Smart Systems for Scalable Grant Strategy. I encourage you to print it out. It's basically one page front and back, some guidelines, some principles, actions you can take to really be as effective as possible in setting up systems that are going to help you get further ahead in terms of funding, in terms of impact, and frankly, in terms of peace of mind. And if you want to discuss your specific situation further, if you hear the material and you're like, hey, look, I'd love to visit with Nate about this, we'd love to spend some time completely free of charge just talking about your situation and to see if there are ways we can be helpful here at Silver Maple Strategies. I've included my email here as well as my website where you can book a call. All right, so as we're getting started, just keep a few things in mind. First of all, emphasize focus over notes, right? All this material is here. If you reach out to me, I'm happy to share slides with you afterward. Suspend disbelief, right? Some of this may seem like way too much work or confusing or like just way too much to process right now, and that's okay. I love Dan Sullivan's framework, the gain versus the gap, right? When you're in gap mode, you're sort of thinking about all the ways you're not living up to what other nonprofits are doing or the impact that you had in mind or, you know, whatever lofty goals that you've set. Whereas when you're in the gain, you're comparing yourself against no one but your past self, right? Yourself as an executive, your past as a nonprofit, right? Think about how far you've come and then imagine what might be possible if you just continue making those strides forward. Even if they're baby steps, right? You can still do this and you'll be amazed at how far you've come. So you can do this. Let's go ahead and dive right into the material. So who am I? I'm Nate Birt. I've been working with nonprofit executives for almost a decade. Started my career in journalism and communications, specifically in food and agriculture. I've written a book called 7 Secrets of Highly Effective Social Impact Communicators and have a podcast specifically for that executive social impact nonprofit audience. I'm also a proud husband, dad of 4, and an aspiring farmer on about 8 acres here in eastern Missouri. We've helped a variety of clients over the years. Really proud of this roster. It isn't not exhaustive, but it gives you a sense of some of the organizations and associations that we've had the privilege of helping here at Silver Maple Strategies. So my goal for this year is to help at least 50 nonprofit executives and their teams building confidence, capacity, and creativity that's going to help them get more funding and deliver greater impact. If we can do that here at Silver Maple Strategies, we've done our job. I hope you can be in that number, and I hope this content today helps you achieve that. So, what are some of the risks that I'm seeing on the landscape? So, given this complex environment we're in, and again, even if you're watching this in 2027 or 2030 or what have you, I suspect that some of these trends are probably going to remain because look, we're moving into a volatile period of time. Things are changing at a very rapid pace with the introduction of new technologies, artificial intelligence, globalization, whatever, like pick a topic. The world is fast, right? And so change is inevitable. And again, these burnout risks are real, whether you're watching this, shortly after I record it in 2025 or sometime in the future. The first challenge I'm seeing is a lot of leaders are focusing first on tactics like apply to the RFP, find the money, do the program work, and then thinking about strategy second. Now, most of these leaders have a strategy, but it may be getting out of date. Like there's broad acknowledgement, at least among the nonprofit leaders I've spoken with in the last few months, that look, we have a strategy, and oftentimes it's gathering dust or it needs to be modified, right? Times have changed. And so there's an emphasis on doing rather than on where are we going. And so sometimes you have to just force yourself to step back, look up, and observe how the landscape has changed, and then evaluate the question, where do we fit into the landscape? What are we doing now that maybe doesn't serve us as well as it could? Number 2 burnout risk, fewer options, more pressure. So as the grants landscape changes, and again, at the time I'm recording this, some federal funding opportunities are coming back online, but maybe at a lower level than you had historically. So as that landscape changes, it can create a lot of stress and urgency. And so you feel like sort of boxed into a corner, right? Well, we had these options. Maybe they went away, they were paused, they were redefined. We had to reapply for them. And so it creates pressure. It sort of creates this scarcity mindset that, look, maybe we're going to have even less and less. Like maybe this is just a prelude to even worse circumstances on the horizon. And so again, I want to encourage you that there is hope. I'll explain why in a moment, but this is a real risk, right? This is a real challenge. Number 3, narrower application windows. So again, one of the themes that I'm hearing on the landscape is that even when funding becomes available, at least from a government standpoint, it may be that we used to have 3 months or 6 months, and now we're going to have 30 days or 45 days or 60 days. So as a result, not only are you going like 150% at work, but that may be bleeding into weekends, nights, and it's just not healthy for anyone. Maybe you can do it for a week or two, but after that, you start to become embittered and questioning, why you signed up for this work in the first place. So that's a real challenge. Number 4, navigating new funder types. There are a lot of nonprofit leaders right now evaluating their portfolio, for lack of a better word, the types of funding, right? Private foundations, states, government, federal government, individual donors, maybe in some cases even having membership programs or online Kickstarter campaigns or the equivalent. So there's a whole lot of options, but it's sort of this effort of you're both trying to do business development and fundraising and learn all these new languages. Maybe if you haven't worked as extensively with private foundations before or family offices or whatever the case might be, there's just a lot, right? You're trying to upskill yourself and your team and get the funding so you can keep having the impact that you desire, keep people employed, keep your clients with the critical services that you provide to them. So it can be a real struggle to do both of those things in parallel. And then finally, I see a lot of missed AI forward opportunities. Again, there's lots of reasonable debate, right, around the carbon footprint, the water impact of artificial intelligence tools, right? These servers require tremendous amounts of electricity and energy, which of course oftentimes comes from coal, not just from renewable sources. Use of water to cool the servers for AI. Not to mention, societal impacts. Is it going to make us dumber? Are we going to be, overtaken? Are we going to have mass joblessness? Like, these are all very valid, legitimate questions I don't have clear answers for. My hypothesis, my bias that I'll reveal to you here, is that my hope is that these AI tools and the strategic use of these innovations can actually help us solve some of those really challenging problems. Again, not everyone's going to agree with me, and that's okay. But if you could suspend your disbelief briefly, I'm going to try to articulate why, steering with past processes without thinking about sort of creative uses of both humans working with machines. I think there's going to be a competitive disadvantage if you just stick with old processes and aren't at least open to exploring how these new tools might be able to help you while also honoring and mitigating the risks that I've identified previously. All right, so those are the risks. How do we navigate all of this? At Silver Maple Strategies, what we do with our clients is we navigate off of this compass, if you will, called the Resilience Leadership Model. And this is our proprietary framework for how we engage with clients. Our position is that what we aspire for each of our nonprofit clients is resilience, right? Resilience is not something you're able to flip a light switch on. It takes time, it takes investment, and it takes, stick-to-itiveness, right? It takes nimbleness in this environment. Underpinning that are three sort of core pillars. The first is morale, right? Burnout speaks directly to this, right? When you're feeling great, when you're feeling inspired, like you're making progress in the right direction, you have high morale as a team, as a leader. The opposite of that is disillusionment, and that really can impede your progress, right? It causes you to question, to second guess. The second pillar is flexibility, right? You need to be able to innovate. You need to be able to pivot with where the market is going, with where the needs of your clients, with where the funder landscape is changing. When you don't have that, you have rigidity. And what do rigid systems do? Well, typically if something rigid is shaken by the wind or you drop it on the floor, maybe it breaks or it cracks. You start to see the insides, right? And we don't want that for you. We want flexibility. And then finally, the third pillar is clarity. Clarity in internal communication, clarity of vision, clarity in how you talk about your organization to the outside world. When you have those three pillars in place, then you can execute these three surrounding power moves of communicate, thinking how you're communicating internally and externally, experimenting with AI tools, with new systems, with new ways of thinking, and then you're able to accelerate, right? Because you've built a foundation all with the aim of becoming a more resilience leadership minded organization. And so that's the framework with which I'm approaching this topic today. And so I hope that sort of context setting can be helpful to you. All right, I'm going to walk you through 5 systems. I won't bother to read all of these right now. Instead, I will go through them step by step. When you put these systems together, you really create an unstoppable force for good because you are really putting the pieces in place in the right order. You don't have to do all of these at once. In fact, I would encourage you just to start small and to start somewhere. And again, it may be different for everyone, but I really do think that when you start with strategy first, sort of system 1, that's probably the best place to start for 9 out of 10 organizations, because it's going to allow you to brush off your existing strategy that maybe needs to be fine-tuned, or to build it from scratch in agreement, in collaboration with your board, your members, your partners, your team. And so we'll dive into each of these, but these are the systems. And let's go ahead and dive in. I am ready to help you strengthen your nonprofit's systems to be able to scale, to grow to whatever level you aspire to really have the greatest impact possible. System 1 is strategy first, tactics second. Remember, the challenge we're trying to address here is this idea that we often focus so much on the doing of the program implementation, applying to funding opportunities. We don't think enough about where are we going. And so the opportunity is to ground your decisions in vision and also in direction. So the 3 steps I recommend if you want to put the system in place and start experimenting. First, dust off your records. Ask, to what degree is our strategic plan currently relevant this year? Where does it need to change, right? Second, dream boldly. Think about the impact you want to have, and then back into your budget numbers, your development goals. Again, it may not just be we want to, reach 1 million people. It may be we want to keep our 10 current staff members employed and reach 1 million people, right? Because if you don't have the people and the systems, you can't get the work done. So think about both, practical near-term goals and also longer-term goals as well. And then apply the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, right? What are the 20% of actions from a strategy standpoint that would deliver 80% of the results for our budget, for our staff's morale, for clarity of our communications, and for the client impact that we're going to have. System number 2 is focused more on pathways and less on panic. So it's really understanding the way the landscape is changing for funding for nonprofits, diversifying those funding streams, and also the pace at which you're moving to regain agency. So a few steps I recommend here. First, assess reality, right? Who are we getting funded by today? What should that funding mix look like in a perfect world in 12 to 24 months? Again, we all realize the world is not perfect, but this gives you a sense of the delta, right? The gap between where are we now, where are we going? How do we make a plan to fill in that gap, right? From a funding mix standpoint, from a funding amount standpoint, etc. Number 2, forecast with data, right? Understand where you've been historically from a budget standpoint, but also like what is working for you now, right? What are you continuing to get funding for? Which programs are your funders and clients wildly happy about? Which ones do you like and enjoy working with? That's a really important question. Not enough people consider. And then what are those red flag areas? Start thinking ahead, right? Start using tools, conversations with your staff, with your peers across the nonprofit community, or even with an AI tool to start studying like what's being posted online, what topics are people, what funding opportunities are coming available now compared to what we saw a year ago. How is that landscape changing? And using that to guide some of your decision making. And then finally, really focusing your effort, right? Identifying 1, maybe 2 funding paths to investigate deeply. It could be, hey, we're going to start working with corporations. Hey, we're going to start working with private foundations. What do we need to know? But really laser focus, right? There's such risk, I think, in spreading yourself too thin that if you're able to maintain and deliver tremendous value to the partners you already have, that gives you, maybe 5 or 10% of your time, if that, right, to focus on the key questions and opportunity areas in a specific new area of funding or maybe an expanded area of funding. That's going to require a little brain power and planning and conversation internally before you're able to take that and make it fundable. All right, I'm going to take a drink real quick and then we'll continue with system 3. Okay. System 3, wider planning horizons. So what I mean by this is, although there are lots of things outside of your control, there are areas you can control, like your documentation, some discussions you've had to brainstorm big programs of work you'd love to do if you had the right partner to do it. The kinds of things that you can start, getting on paper or throwing up against a wall, even if they're not at all fully baked. So, number 1, expect the unexpected, right? So this is the idea that things are constantly changing in the world of nonprofits, and increasingly they seem to be changing at a more rapid pace, right? There's more unpredictability. So recognize that, like, hey, we need to build flexibility and a sort of rapid response system or process into our just daily walk, right? So in case something happens, we can drop everything or drop the, 80% that doesn't matter and keep the 20% that does, so we can respond to this new opportunity or challenge. And then document that, write it down, record videos, do something basic to say, hey, if everything implodes, here are the 10 steps we take to get things right or to figure out what goes next. Next, build playbooks. Again, this is the idea of off-the-shelf processes. It could be boilerplate project narratives. It could be descriptions like biographies, an updated database of whose time is allocated toward which programs, so you can quickly plug that information into new grant opportunities in the future. Descriptions of key partners, letters of, generic letters of support or templates on official letterhead. Those are the kinds of things I'm talking about. And then finally, define your thresholds, right? Commit to specific dollar values based on, system 1 and 2. Where are you going? Agree on that as an organization. And then think about how funders' values are also going to drive that, right? Define the kinds of funders you would or wouldn't work with, the values that need to be aligned, the kind of working relationship that you want to have. And again, have those things and then have conversations about them month to month, year to year, so that there's no surprises here. You're just really sort of working the plan when the moment arises that you need to. Okay, system 4, relational fundraising fluency. So this idea is basically, don't just think about responding to um, trying to do two things at once, right? Which is like learning about new funding types that I need to go after, but also just trying to keep funds coming in the door. Find a way to really sort of get a strategy in place so that you can build shared language and trust before you ever pitch anything. And so, what I'm suggesting here is to start, rather than sort of doing the reverse, which is applying to an RFP, start by thinking about, okay, I'm going to do selective RFP applications, but in addition to that, based on that one or two key funding opportunities I've identified, I'm going to start identifying my dream list of funders I'd like to work with. I'm going to start identifying the people who work there, right? Because people fund programs, institutions do not, right? There's not at this point, at least as far as I know, there's not a faceless, monolith that's sort of rubber stamping proposals. Um, Truth be told, maybe we get there someday. I don't want that world. I don't think you do either. And so I think building human to human relationships and can really be helpful. So first of all, know your people, right? Externally, what are funders? Who's leading them? Who's on the board? Who are the program officers? Who's the executive director? If that applies. What are their values? What can we learn from data, right? Whether it's Candide or Instrumental or Grantable or any number of other resources that are available online, either free or for a subscription. What can we see about historical funding trends, how it's ebbed and flowed over the years, what kinds of work they're funding? Then once you have that, you can spend better time investment on those RFPs. Second, get your people known. So one of the things we work with our clients a lot on here at Silver Maple Strategies is executive ghostwriting and thought leadership. We believe that one of the really great opportunity areas for many nonprofits is that too often their staff, their clients, and their partners are not getting enough visibility and face time with funders. And so when funding organizations sort of cull through all the RFPs, there's not that relationship. There's not that immediacy of, I know this group, I know what they do, I know their position on these issues. Again, not talking politically, just talking about the issues that you work on, where you add value and impact to your clients, how you add public benefit back to the world. Talking about those issues, giving case studies and examples of programs, data points and insights from the work that you're doing that's been successful, right? Those are the kinds of ways in which we recommend nonprofits get their people known. And then finally, make the ask, right? Think outside of the box, right? Rather than just, we're only going to do the traditional RFP process. Can you request a meeting with the funder, just a getting to know you kind of conversation? Can you share an insight, maybe a report or a resource or a video or a webinar that you offered to give those funders sort of insider knowledge of what you're working on, inside baseball of like how this industry or this system or this process works? Could you brainstorm a program together and co-create something of value you could then present to a funder? You get to decide, but the point is to sort of reverse the equation and think about how can you start to personalize and normalize the work that you do so that when it comes time for funding, you are top of mind. And finally, system 5, AI as a mission multiplier. We are at Silver Maple Strategies striving to be an AI forward organization. That means humans at the center with AI as a strategic partner and something that can unlock new value, create new opportunities, help organizations get their life and joy back in the nonprofit work that they do. And so I think it's very tempting as an organization to say, hey, this is all really exciting, or I'm scared of it, I don't know what to think about this, and it's frankly too much work, I don't have time, right? If you don't invest time now, it's my perspective, and again, I'm not an expert, but I've been around the block a few times with these tools, and I can tell you that it is possible, it is, I think, greater than 50% possibility that AI changes the world more in our lifetime in a few short years. This is 2025, so by 2030, I think the working world, the world of how nonprofits function could look vastly different than it does in 2025, even within 3 years. And so what I would encourage you is just sort of start doing some research and be thinking about, excuse me for one moment. All right, thank you so much. So again, 3 key ideas to think about here. Step number 1 think about AI as a strategy partner first, not just a capacity, builder, right? Yes, AI can save time, it can help me write stuff, it can help me research things. That's awesome. It has tremendous use cases. And you can ask AI to interview you. You can ask you to think more deeply. You can ask it to be devil's advocate based on this idea or program concept. You can ask it to review RFPs and suggest, creative ways to frame up what you're already doing to match what the funder is looking for. So again, start to get creative and just experimental. At any rate, I think that can be helpful to you. Number two, follow your curiosity, right? So study out of all the AI tools and resources. I want you to focus on sort of the fundamentals. My business coach, Ed Gandia, calls it first principles thinking. Really think about the issues that you're passionate about, the things you'd love to be able to do if you could wave a magic wand. And then start to unpack, okay, what do I need to be learning or experimenting with within the wide universe of AI to see how this could apply to me and my career, to our nonprofit, to our clients. And then experiment, learn, and share, right? Right now in 2025, ChatGPT Teams, I think it's like $25 a seat per month. And so, there's a tremendous amount of value, and bringing play back into the nonprofit space, I think, can be really powerful, right? Too often, we're just overwhelmed with work. We're overwhelmed by the changing landscape, overwhelmed by uncertainty. AI is not only a powerful tool, a strategy partner, but it can also bring a sense of play and joy back into your work. Again, if you're wired that way, you may not be, and that's okay. But for nonprofits that are going to be competitive and really delivering at the highest level and being as flexible, having the highest morale, the greatest clarity, they will be using AI. And so the question is, do you want to be in that number? All right, so here's a quick summary of where we've been. We talked about 5 challenges and 5 corresponding systems to address each of those challenges. And I hope this content can be helpful to you. Now I want to move into the question of, okay, what do I do with this information? So of the 5 systems we've discussed, I want you to think about which will you start experimenting with this month. So take a minute and write down which of those 5 systems, and I'm going to pop back and look at this previous slide. Whoop, jumping too far ahead there. Is it going to be system 1, strategy first, tactics second? Again, for most organizations, this is where I recommend starting, because until you get that strategy fine-tuned, or at least have a revisit maybe once a quarter or something, right? Because we know strategy and plans change. But that's a place I would strongly recommend. More pathways and less panic. Basically, how do we think about diverse funding pools? Number 3, wider planning horizons. How do we actually get documentation and resources on the shelf so it's easy to pull those things off the shelf and be responsive in an environment where we have maybe fewer funding opportunities, or there are shorter time windows to reply to RFPs, things like that. Number 4, start to think about, how do I start investigating which type of new funder do I want to go after? How do I start building that relationship creatively, reversing the script on the traditional apply to the RFP and hope that we get the award? And then number 5, AI. Again, maybe alongside or shortly as a fast second to number 1, system 5, I think is a place you can sort of begin unlocking immediate value, like this afternoon if you wanted to. So food for thought, write down which of these systems make sense for you. And then beyond that, think about what's the first step you're going to take to sort of make progress on that specific system, right? Maybe it's a one-on-one with people who report directly to you. Maybe it's your next team meeting. Maybe you've got a retreat coming up where you'd like to put this on the agenda. Think about what's the first step you're going to take, 15 minutes or less, to begin thinking about what it would take to put that system in place. All right, while you're doing that, we're going to jump ahead here. Just want to leave you with like a rallying cry, right? If not now, when, right? If you don't invest in yourself, your career as an executive at a nonprofit, your nonprofit team, your clients, when, right? Do you care enough? I believe that you do, right? I've met enough of you, you're deeply passionate. Like, you are my people. And so if you feel convicted, if you feel like there's an opportunity here, then think about that action and taking that first step that you just identified. Jim Quick, who's an author, says, none of it works unless you work. We have to do our part. If knowing is half the battle, action is the second half of the battle. So I think that's exactly right, right? We know what to do. We have the skills, the tools, the capacity to learn and sort of read the landscape. And now we've got to take action, right? We've got to go do. So what are you going to do and when? All right, I mentioned that quick survey. So if you would, either in your internet browser or on your phone, scan the QR code or type this code. And I would love some quick feedback. Once you've completed the survey, you will get that free resource I mentioned at the beginning, that cheat sheet about these 5 systems that you can use as a nonprofit executive. Again, if you don't have time to take the survey, I understand, but it does help me make sure that I am aligned and delivering value to you and hopefully getting the read on future topics or ways to make these more helpful to you in the future. And again, if you take the survey, you will get that free resource at the end, the cheat sheet. All right. Again, I am Nate Birt. I appreciate the time you've taken to spend with me today. I hope this was helpful as you think about 5 systems to scale your impact, to scale your fundraising, to scale your sanity. And if you find that you want to discuss your specific situation completely for free, I hope you'll book a consultation with me. You can go to silvermaplestrategies.com/contact. Again, silvermaplestrategies.com/contact and book a meeting with me anytime. Would love to spend time diving more deeply into the opportunities and challenges you're facing, your goals for the months ahead, and see if there are ways we can add value to you. And again, thank you so much for your time and for spending that with us today at Silver Maple Strategies. Until the next workshop, I'm Nate Birt, and we'll see you soon on the next workshop. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.